What's up, guys? My name's Brandon and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to be talking about even more new iOS 18.4 features and changes. We're going to talk about the drama over iOS 19 leaks, how Apple is trying to turn the Apple Watch into an AI device, a crazy AirTag story, and much more. And if you want to continue staying in the loop with everything going on in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Okay, so this week was very interesting. So first off, on Monday, we got the RC version, the release candidate version of iOS 18.4, and then on Friday we got the second RC build of iOS 18.4. Now there were major issues with the first build, extremely disappointing issues with the first RC build, something I haven't seen really at all in iOS 18. We'll talk about that in a moment, but the second RC seems to have fixed the major issue that I was being plagued with and other people were as well. Now, of course, with this second RC build, which is most likely going to be the final release of iOS 18.4 that we see next week to the general public, we did get the release notes included with this. And you can see these are the release notes right here. Now, something I found kind of interesting is that Apple made no mention of the new emoji. So it makes me wonder if Apple is just really downplaying emoji as part of an update these days, maybe because of Genmoji with Apple Intelligence. That could be part of the reason why. Now, in these release notes, we did see a couple of additional things mentioned here that we did not know previously. So one of these was actually a bug fix related to screen time. So you can see that the app limits for screen time, if you're monitoring a kid's phone, it says that app limits persist even after a child uninstalls and reinstalls an app. So that was a bug that has now been fixed. And there's also several changes to the Photos application in iOS 18.4. I feel like Apple is continuing to kind of add and iterate on Photos because it was so negative. The press was so negative on it when iOS 18 got released. But there are several new changes in 18.4 to Photos. One of them is actually inside of the albums. If you tap on the three dots right here, we now not only have this new UI for changing between the list view and the key photo, but we can also now sort our albums by date modified. So if you do that, it will change that. And of course, you do have your filters down here as well. If you had folders, with multiple albums inside, you can now filter by those. And one thing I'm happy to see in iOS 18.4 is inside of Photos. I think I mentioned this in an early beta, but I really haven't talked about it much since then, is the hiding the recently viewed and shared albums. So if you don't want to show the recently viewed and shared albums, you can now disable that. So those actually appear under utilities. Some people might have not even known that those existed, but if you go ahead and enable that, you can see we have recently viewed right here, and it will show all the photos that you recently viewed. Now, one thing that has really confused me about iOS 18.4, the RC build, both RC1 and RC2, is if you go into your recently deleted folder right here, you'll notice that the UI that we had at the bottom has disappeared. So if you remember, in the first several betas of iOS 18.4, I believe beta 1 through beta 4, we had an option to remove all or recover all of the recently deleted items in just one tap. You didn't have to select them all or anything like that. It was a different UI down there at the bottom, but that was removed for some odd reason in the first and the second RC build. Now, we did also get a fix in the notification center in the second RC build of iOS 18.4. So there were a lot of issues. People were reporting a lot of issues with same app notifications right there. So if I go into Wallet, for example, a lot of people had issues where when they open up, notifications, multiple notifications from the same app, it would have a visual bug, but that appears to be fixed with iOS 18.4 RC2. Now, as far as priority notifications, I've had great experiences with the priority notifications in 18.4. So I don't have any right now present time, but I have had a great experience with that. The animation is very smooth and very fluid. So I'm a big fan of the prioritize notifications feature in 18.4. If you go into your notifications right here and go down to prioritize notifications, you can see kind of how that looks right there. And of course, you can disable certain applications as well, which is nice. Okay, so it's about time I talk about the major issue I had on iOS 18.4 RC1. And I briefly mentioned this in my RC2 video, but I wanted to take more time here in Apple Weekly where I have more time and I have your attention more to explain the major issues I had with iOS 18.4 beta 1. So it all started about 48 hours after I installed iOS 18.4 RC1 earlier this week. So it was like around Wednesday, I believe, like maybe, early Wednesday, my phone randomly rebooted. It was not a respring where it just quickly comes back to the lock screen and you didn't really miss a beat. This is a full reboot. It took like, a good 60 seconds to come back on. It was like a long reboot. So I thought that was weird. I wasn't even doing anything. My phone was sitting on the wireless charger in my car. I wasn't doing a thing. Like I had my navigation pulled up, but that was it. And then it happened again later that day while I was on the phone. And then it happened again a couple days later on the phone again. So basically it happened about 5 times over the span of like 3 days. So like Wednesday to Friday, it happened 5 times. And it was a full reboot every time. And pretty much every single time I was doing something different on my phone. Like the 2 times I was on my phone, it was in my car while I was just on speakerphone. I wasn't even touching my phone and it just randomly rebooted. And the other times, I don't recall what I was doing, but it was nothing very specific. Like it was nothing that would usually cause a phone to reboot. And that's very bizarre to happen in an RC build. This is supposed to be a build that could potentially be put out to the public. And that is a big danger, in my opinion, if that were to be pushed out to the public. And I believe that is why Apple pushed out an RC2 version of iOS 18.4. But that is bizarre. I had not had a random reboot like spree like that since like maybe iOS 17, iOS 16, I know I did not have that at all during the iOS 18 betas. Even the 18.0 betas, I did not have any time where I had random reboots like that. I had random resprings where it would just go right back to the lock screen, real quick thing. But the full reboot like this is crazy, especially on an RC build, what's supposed to be the most stable of all betas. So yeah, I just wanted to briefly mention my experience with the first RC of iOS 18.4. Nothing could prepare me for that. Like I said, it happened multiple days into using the software. So it's easy to recommend it and not really know that something like that was going to happen. And that's why I always tell you guys, it's just never a good idea to use your main phone as a, beta testing phone. Like you should have a secondary device for beta testing if you care a lot about stability. Like if that was an important phone call, if I was like on a sale, like on a meeting trying to close a deal for something significant, that's a major issue, So that's just the things I kind of try to mention to you guys why you might not want to have a beta installed on your main everyday device. Now I have to mention this as well. It was not just me experiencing these random reboots. I got dozens of you guys, at least 2 dozen people commenting and kind of just telling me that they had a similar experience with the random reboots. So both on X, I made a post on X and I had a lot of replies of people saying that they did and didn't have this issue. And then also my Discord server. And I also sourced some people on Reddit on the iOS beta, subreddit, and multiple people were having this issue as well. And it seemed like there were 2 common denominators for this random reboot happening. It was related to the Find My application. People had Find My open, and then other people, it was just when they connected to CarPlay. Either it wouldn't connect, the first time, they had to plug it in again, or it would just reboot when they were on CarPlay. And thankfully, if you look through the diff logs for RC1 versus RC2, there are multiple mentions here of things being changed related to MapKit. So it looks like maybe MapKit was the cause for these random reboots. Let's hope, because so far it's not happened to me at all on the second RC build. So if you guys had that experience, let me know, or just let me know your thoughts in general in the comments down below. And if you had that, let me know if RC2 fixed it for you. So far for me, I've not had any reboots, but if I have anything, if anything changes at all, I will let you guys know over on X. Anyways, moving on, let's talk about some other things that happened this week. So if you live in Australia, you just got the hearing test and hearing aid features for the AirPods Pro 2, which is nice. You got it before Canada. Congratulations. Also in the Facebook application, we now have a new Friends tab to keep up with just your Facebook friends. So you can see stories, posts, and things like that. It's kind of like a flashback to 2007 where it used to be just, all your friends only and not just a For You page. There was also a change to Instagram, which by the way, if you're not following me on Instagram, I'm just at Brandon Butch over there. I have been posting some reels right here. So be sure to follow me over there if you've not done so already. But anyways, if we go into a reel right here, we'll just go into this reel right here and we hold on the right of this reel, you'll notice that it fast forwards now. So maybe not in that section, but if we go right here, you can see that it fast forwards that reel. So basically Instagram is stealing a feature from TikTok, where you can just hold on the right side to go at 2x speed. Also, if you're a WhatsApp user, you can now set WhatsApp as your default messaging application and your default phone call application. So you can see when I go into default calling app, we have WhatsApp, and same with messaging right there, which is great to have because I know a lot of you guys, especially outside of the US, like to use WhatsApp over, messages and over the regular phone application. If you're a Nintendo fan, we just saw a new Nintendo application get announced and released this week called Nintendo Today. So it says Nintendo Fun delivered daily. So you have an animated calendar of just like upcoming releases, different things going on. So if you're really into, Nintendo, you might want to check out this free application to keep up with everything going on in the world of Nintendo. Also this week, we saw updates for Final Cut Pro for the Mac. We saw an update to Final Cut Pro for iPad and for Final Cut Camera, the standalone application that you can install on your iPhone. You can see kind of the changes right here that are included with Final Cut Camera. Some really nice additions there. And then we also have some really nice changes to Final Cut Pro on the Mac, which you can see right here. I'm really a fan of the adjustment layer change right there. And then here's what is changed for Final Cut Pro for the iPad. Now going back to iOS 18.4, the RC2 build, I did run a Geekbench test shortly after the initial test that I did. You can see right here is at 5:58 p.m. once my device was able to cool down, and you can see that we got a much better result in terms of performance. 3585 on single core, 8822 on the multi-core. And take a look at the score compared to everything else. That is the highest multi-core I've had since February 22nd. So that was 18.4 as well, but you can see that even that time, I guess that was actually higher in single core as well. But nonetheless, really good score here on the second RC build. And I can just tell from feeling it that it does feel more stable as well. Less bugs, less jitter in terms of like the notification center and things like that. And hopefully, again, fingers crossed, no random reboots on RC2. Now, as far as the battery life goes, I'm currently at 79%. You guys will have to let me know what I started this video with, but it seems like battery life is pretty good here on RC2. I really didn't have any issues with RC1, but it does seem to be a little bit improved here with RC2. I would expect the battery life to be pretty solid going into the final release next week. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about what to expect next week, because we are most likely getting iOS 18.4 released to the general public. The full rollout should be coming next week. Sometime between April 1st and April 4th is when I would expect that, because Apple did say that we're going to see 18.4 in April. So I would say the very latest we'd see it is April 7th, but next week seems to be more likely for that 18.4 release. And we should be seeing 18.5 beta 1 get pushed out shortly after that 18.4 public release. And that's probably not going to be a big update, but it is something exciting if you're still on the beta train. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And let's start with iOS 19 drama. So as you guys know, we talked about it. WWDC is happening on June 9th, and iOS 19 will be unveiled, and we're expecting a major redesign, potentially the biggest redesign since iOS 7. At least that's what Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg said. Now this week, we did see a new video from John Prosser here on YouTube, FPT, and he published a video about a first look at iOS 19, and he does show some alleged iOS 19 screenshots in that video. But a lot of people thought they were real, and they might be real. We really don't know at this point. But Mark Gurman at Bloomberg had this to say about that video and those screenshots. iOS 19 images floating around are not representative of what we'll see at WWDC. They look to be based on either very old builds or vague descriptions, missing key features. Expect more from Apple in June. Regardless, mock-ups, real or not, are always exciting for Apple watchers. So honestly, I don't think anybody, including Gurman or Prosser, I don't think anybody has seen present day iOS 19 screenshots. Like, that's just the reality. Like, people have probably seen stuff that Apple's been working on for a while, like going back months, but as of present day, probably nobody except for Apple employees who are working on the software actually knows what it's going to look like, because this stuff, like software stuff, changes so rapidly. It's like, it's easy to predict hardware stuff because it's hard to change hardware stuff, with months in advance like that, but software can change within a week. So at this point, it's hard to say what's real or what's not, but I really don't think that anything that's going to come out at all, unless unless it's like a week before or the week of Dub is going to be actually legit and what we're actually going to see, at least not down to, the exact detail. It might be similar, but I don't think anybody at this point knows exactly what iOS 19 is going to look like. But we are hearing from Gurman that we are going to see that redesign, and that I do trust and I do believe that. So as far as how big the redesign is going to be, I don't know. I think some people might be disappointed because people are always disappointed because it's not a big enough redesign for some people, but we'll have to wait and see, and that's what makes it exciting. Okay, so now let's talk about the Apple Watch, because we're now hearing that the Apple Watch Ultra 3 coming later this year is set to get a new modem, and it will support 5G and satellite texting, according to Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg. So he said this: the next Ultra model will get support for satellite texting as well as the flavor of 5G wireless service known as RedCap. As part of the changes, it's due to get a new modem chip from MediaTek. Meanwhile, Apple continues to run into problems with the blood pressure monitoring feature. That is a feature that's been so long overdue for the Apple Watch, and it looks like we might not be seeing it again this year. But not just that. Do you guys remember the plastic Apple Watch SE that we were supposed to get this year? That might not happen either. You can see here, apparently the designers were not very happy with how the design is turning out, so it might just get scrapped altogether. So the Ultra model might be exciting this year, but that might be about it in terms of excitement for the Apple Watch. However, looking forward, there's some pretty exciting things on the horizon for the Apple Watch, because Apple is hoping to turn those into AI devices with cameras. So Gurman said this: Apple is working on new versions of the Apple Watch that include cameras. As with the future AirPods, this would help the device see the outside world and use AI to deliver relevant information. These models are still at least generations away from hitting the market, but they are on the roadmap. And then he continues to say, as part of this plan, Apple is considering adding cameras to both its standard series watches and the Ultra models. The current idea is to put the camera inside the display of the series version, like the front-facing lens of the iPhone. The Ultra will take a different approach, with the camera lens sitting on the side of the watch near the crown and button. So I am very intrigued by this move and kind of making the Apple Watch an AI device. So Gurman did say that he's not expecting FaceTime or anything like that to come to the Apple Watch, just because it has a camera. It's strictly going to be used to kind of understand the outside world. And that opens up a lot of opportunities and possibilities with the Apple Watch that I'm honestly pretty excited about. But again, I would not expect that for multiple years to come, probably like 3 years plus for that to actually happen. But still, we haven't really heard anything exciting about the Apple Watch in a long time, so I'll take it. At least we have some excitement to talk about with the future of the Apple Watch. And then finally, just as tradition, we have another crazy AirTag story. So this time, 3 men in Australia broke through the fence at a shipping yard and headed to a refrigerated container containing 42 kilos of cocaine worth $13 million. The 3 men, who were all in their 20s, were being paid $5,000 each by someone to smuggle the coke out of the container. And get this, the way the men were able to locate the correct shipping container in that big, area of containers was via an AirTag. Yes, they traced 3 AirTags that were placed among the hidden drugs at the port of departure before it arrived at the shipping yard. And when I say they, I say the people who are paying these kids $5,000 each. Those are the ones who put the AirTags in there and told them to just trace it down. So once they used their Find My apps to locate the container, they broke in and removed 22 bricks, put them in their black bags, and took off with the kilos of coke around their shoulder as they ran at 3 a.m. But just as soon as they got outside of the shipping yard, they were arrested. They were surrounded by cops, and the 29-year-old getaway driver was also arrested because those bricks they stole weren't actually full of cocaine. They were just filled with dirt, and it was planted by police who set them up. Come to find out, the men were approached by a man inside of a Sydney nightclub who asked if they wanted to make some money. Seems legit. That's the oldest trick in the book. I cannot believe these men fell for that. That is a straight up GTA mission plot. Anyways, all 4 men were charged with attempting to possess a commercial quality of a border controlled drug, and they all pled guilty, but got different sentences, with one getting 4 years in jail, another getting 3 years in jail, and the other 2 are getting sentenced in June. So that is a very unique and a crazy use case of the AirTags, and that's honestly pretty smart by the cops to use the AirTags in that way to lure the kids to, that shipping container. I guess not kids, the 20-some-year-olds, but still, that is pretty crazy. I'm showing my age here. I feel old just saying that. Anyways, that is crazy. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Apple Weekly. As always, if you did, give it a thumbs up. Also, be sure to let me know your thoughts about this entire episode. Anything you thought was interesting down in the comments below. And if you want to stay in the loop with everything going on in the world of Apple, if you want to continue getting these Apple Weekly episodes in your homepage or your subscription box, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.